Hey, beautiful souls. Let's delve into the folklore of the festival of the spring equinox, which we neo-pagans usually call Ostara. It's such an interesting festival from a folklore point of view. For our wheel of the year, we normally draw inspiration from Celtic cultures, but there's not much evidence for the ancient Celts celebrating the spring equinox. Far less evidence than we have for the four main festivals of Beltane, Samhain, and the two solstices. But the Neolithic Irish built cairns with chambers that align with the rising sun on the equinoxes, most famously Cairn T, which has solar symbols on the walls that are lit up by the entry of the sun's rays into the chamber twice a year. So clearly it's not a new thing to celebrate and to mark this event. And that makes sense, as our ancestors would certainly have been aware of the shift in light and warmth that occurs as the sun passes the equator. They would have known that this was the time when day and night were of an equal length. But our traditions now are a weird mixture of old and new from different parts of the world. The festival we call Ostara in the neo-pagan tradition is named for an Anglo-Saxon goddess, Easter. And it's likely that the name of the Christian festival, Easter, a festival that also celebrates life and renewal in its own way, comes linguistically from this goddess, blending and absorbing local pre-Christian traditions in the way that Christians did. But we really don't know much about the goddess Easter or how she was worshipped. She's mentioned in the writing of the Venerable Bede in around 700, which is the only real reference we have. He said, Easter month, which is April, was once called after a goddess of theirs named Easter, in whose honor feasts were celebrated in that month. So there was a spring goddess. She had a festival. It's not too much of a stretch to associate her with the return of the sun and the fertility of the land. And that's all we've really got. It was Jacob Grimm of fairy tale fame who suggested in his writing that she was a local version of a more widespread Germanic goddess called Ostara. He speculated in his works on mythology that Easter was associated with spring and fertility, and that her name was the root word of Easter for the Christians. But he based his theories on linguistic evidence. The name Easter or Ostara is related to words meaning east or dawn in various Germanic languages. He also pointed to similarities between the customs possibly associated with Easter and those of other Germanic peoples, like the lighting of bonfires, the decoration of eggs, which were common in that time. There's further speculation that the Anglo-Saxon Easter, along with the Lithuanian, Roman, Greek, and Hindu goddesses of the dawn, all descend from a Proto-Indo-European dawn goddess who was worshipped about 6,000 years ago. But of course, as with all things Proto-Indo-European, there's no real proof, more circumstantial evidence and working back from what we have, though that doesn't mean it's not true. So sadly, our custom of referring to the spring equinox as Ostara possibly owes more to German romantic folklore than it does to the ancients. As for the Easter Bunny, there's certainly folklore associating the hare with fertility, abundance, immortality, and rebirth. And the month of March is when their mating season reaches its height, and we get mad March hares. It's easy to see why hares are associated with fertility given their famous breeding habits. And some folklore traditions also hold that the hare dies with the moon every night, only for them both to be resurrected at twilight with the return of the darkness, which links the hare to rebirth and resurrection, which are potent spring equinox themes, as life is reborn from what seems like the death of winter. Now, folklore does associate hares with the goddess Easter. The story goes that she transformed a freezing bird, sometimes it just has freezing wings, into a hare to act as her messenger and or pull her chariot. But it continued to lay eggs for her festival every year. Sometimes they're brightly coloured eggs. Sadly, this story only started circulating around the late 1800s, so it doesn't appear to be an ancient tale. Although Germany did have an Osterhase, or Easter hare, of uncertain origin long before this, certainly documented by the 1500s. But there's a world of difference between a domestic rabbit, cute, small, twitchy nose, and a wild hare, huge, fey, possibly touched by madness. It looks like it was when later German immigrants took the Easter hare to the USA that it morphed into a rabbit. Maybe this is partly because in the US they call their native hares jackrabbits. It's very confusing. However, the tradition of decorating eggs is found all over the world and certainly is ancient. There are records of this being associated with the New Year spring festival in Persia from about 580 before Common Era. And there are old traditions of egg decorating from Australia, from Egypt, from Slavic countries and others. Eggs are a beautiful symbol of both fertility, birth, and the return of spring. The chickens that wouldn't have been laying over the winter start laying again in spring. It was the Victorians that started making eggs from chocolate, dispensing with all that messy yolk removing business, but I feel kind of also diluting the symbolism to a large extent. So almost none of our modern Ostara traditions are handed down intact from our ancient ancestors, but the themes of this festival are timeless and enduring and ancient in themselves. This has always been a time of rebirth, resurrection of life after the winter rest, the return of warmth and lighter days, and the miraculous pulsing of new life within the earth, which is worth celebrating. If you'd like some ideas for practical ways to celebrate this festival, then I've made a whole separate video about that, which you'll find on my channel. And if you've enjoyed this video, do like and follow for more. With so much love.